The morning sun cast long shadows across Kensington Palace as Prince William stared out the window of his private study. His hands trembled slightly as he held the official letter that had arrived just hours earlier. The royal seal seemed to mock him as he read the words again, hoping somehow they would change, but they remained the same, cold and final. Kate Middleton sat in the adjacent chair, her usually bright eyes now red-rimmed from crying. She had tried to maintain her composure when the palace staff delivered the devastating news, but behind closed doors, the weight of their situation had finally broken through her carefully constructed facade. The Duchess of Cambridge, known for her grace under pressure, found herself facing something that no amount of royal training could have prepared her for. The letter detailed the results of a private investigation that had been ongoing for months, without their knowledge. Someone within the royal household had been leaking sensitive information about their family, their children, and their most private moments to the tabloid press. But this wasn't just any ordinary breach of privacy. The investigation had uncovered evidence that suggested the leak was coming from someone they trusted completely, someone who had access to their most intimate family moments. William set the letter down on his mahogany desk, the same desk where his father had once signed important documents, where generations of royals had made decisions that shaped the monarchy. Now he faced a decision that could potentially tear apart not just their family, but the very foundation of trust within the royal household. The investigation had narrowed down the suspects to 3 individuals, each of whom had been with their family for years. Kate wiped away a tear with the back of her hand, careful not to disturb her makeup completely. In just 2 hours, they were scheduled to attend a charity gala for children's mental health, an event they had been planning for months. The irony wasn't lost on either of them, that they would be speaking about the importance of trust and security for children, while their own family's security had been compromised in the most personal way possible. The couple had always prided themselves on maintaining a relatively normal family life despite their royal status. They had worked hard to create a safe, loving environment for Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Their children attended regular school, played with friends, and enjoyed family vacations just like any other family. But this betrayal threatened to shatter that carefully constructed normalcy. William stood up and walked over to where Kate sat, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. They had been through difficult times before, but this felt different. This wasn't about public scrutiny or media pressure from strangers. This was about someone they had welcomed into their home, someone who had shared meals with them, someone who had played with their children, and been privy to their most vulnerable moments. The investigation report contained detailed evidence of how private family photos had been sold to magazines, how personal conversations had been recorded and transcribed for gossip columns, and how their children's daily routines had been documented and shared with unauthorized parties. The betrayal ran deep, affecting not just William and Kate, but potentially putting their children at risk. Kate looked up at her husband, seeing the same pain reflected in his eyes that she felt in her own heart. They had always been a team, facing challenges together, but this situation felt overwhelming. The trust they had built with their staff, the sense of family they had created within the palace walls, all of it felt tainted now. Every conversation they'd had, every private moment they'd shared had potentially been compromised. The palace security team had assured them that immediate steps had been taken to prevent any further leaks, but the damage was already done. Personal photographs of their children playing in the palace gardens had appeared in international magazines. Private conversations about their concerns for George's adjustment to school had been printed word for word in tabloid newspapers. Even their discussions about Kate's health and wellness routine had become public fodder. William picked up his phone, scrolling through the missed calls from his private secretary, the head of palace security, and several other officials who needed to discuss the next steps in the investigation. But he wasn't ready to face those conversations yet. Right now, he needed to be present for Kate, to figure out how they would move forward as a family, how they would rebuild the trust that had been so carelessly shattered. The weight of their royal duties felt heavier than usual today. In a few hours, they would need to put on their public faces, smile for the cameras, and deliver speeches about resilience and hope. The public would never know about the private hell they were experiencing. about the betrayal that had rocked their world just hours before their public appearance. Kate stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the gardens where their children often played. She thought about all the times they had felt truly happy and secure in their home, all the moments that now felt tainted by the knowledge that someone had been watching, documenting, and selling their privacy to the highest bidder. The violation felt almost physical in its intensity. The investigation had also revealed that the betrayer had been planning to release even more sensitive information, including details about the children's security arrangements and Kate's private health information. The thought of their children being put at risk because of someone's greed and betrayal made both parents feel sick to their stomachs. As they prepared to leave for the charity gala, both William and Kate knew that their lives would never be quite the same. The innocence and trust they had managed to maintain despite their public roles had been shattered. But they also knew they had each other, and their love for their children would give them the strength to face whatever came next. The investigation was entering its final phase, and soon they would know the identity of the person who had betrayed their family so completely. The anticipation of that revelation hung heavy in the air between them, a mixture of dread and desperate need for closure that would define their every moment until the truth was finally revealed. The charity gala had been a masterpiece of royal composure. William and Kate had smiled, shaken hands, and delivered heartfelt speeches about children's welfare while their hearts were breaking inside. Not a single person in attendance could have guessed the turmoil that was consuming the royal couple. But as their car pulled away from the event venue, the masks finally came off. Kate slumped back into the leather seat of their official car, exhaustion washing over her face. The effort of maintaining her public persona while dealing with such personal pain had drained every ounce of energy she had. William sat beside her in silence, both of them processing the strange sensation of living a double life within their own home. Back at Kensington Palace, Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews was waiting for them in William's private study. She was the lead investigator on their case, a seasoned professional who specialized in high-profile security breaches. Her presence meant only one thing. There had been developments in the investigation that required their immediate attention. Detective Matthews had spread several files across William's desk, each containing evidence that painted a clearer picture of how extensive the breach had been. The investigation had revealed that the betrayal had been going on for almost 2 years, far longer than they had initially suspected. Personal family moments, private conversations, and intimate details about their children's lives had been systematically documented and sold to various media outlets. The detective explained that the investigation had used sophisticated techniques to trace the source of the leaks. They had analyzed metadata from photographs, traced communication patterns, and even monitored financial transactions to identify who had been receiving payments from tabloid newspapers. The evidence was overwhelming, and it all pointed to someone who had been trusted with the most sacred aspects of their family life. Kate listened in horror as Detective Matthews detailed how their private family traditions had been exposed to public scrutiny. Their annual summer vacation plans, George's struggles with homework, Charlotte's dance recitals, and even Louis's bedtime stories had all been documented and shared with unauthorized parties. The violation felt complete and devastating. William asked the question that had been haunting both of them since the investigation began. How close are we to identifying the person responsible? Detective Matthews looked at the couple with a mixture of professional confidence and personal sympathy. She understood that this wasn't just about catching a criminal. This was about healing a family that had been deeply wounded by betrayal. The detective revealed that they had narrowed their investigation to 3 suspects, each of whom had been eliminated through careful analysis of their access opportunity and financial records. Only one person remained who fit all the criteria for being the source of the leaks. The evidence against this individual was substantial, but they needed to conduct one final verification before making an arrest. The suspect was someone who had been with their family for over 4 years, someone who had been present during some of their happiest moments and most challenging times. This person had helped care for their children, had been trusted with family secrets, and had been considered almost like family by both William and Kate. The thought that such trust had been so callously betrayed made both parents feel physically sick. Detective Matthews explained that the final phase of the investigation would involve setting a trap to catch the suspect in the act. They would plant false but tempting information with only this individual and monitor whether it appeared in the press. It was a standard technique, but the thought of having to actively participate in exposing someone they had trusted felt painful for both William and Kate. Kate asked about the impact this betrayal might have had on their children's safety. Detective Matthews assured them that no information that could directly endanger the children had been leaked. But the breach had still violated their privacy in ways that could have long-term psychological effects. Knowing that strangers had intimate details about their daily lives, their fears, their joys, and their family dynamics was deeply disturbing. The investigation had also uncovered evidence that the betrayer had been planning to write a tell-all book about their family life. This book would have contained even more sensitive information, including details about their marriage, their parenting philosophy, and their relationships with other members of the royal family. The potential damage to their reputation and their children's well-being could have been catastrophic. William struggled with feelings of guilt, wondering if he had somehow failed to protect his family adequately. He questioned every decision they had made about who to trust, every person they had allowed into their inner circle. The self-doubt was eating away at him, making him question his judgment about everything from staff hiring to security protocols. Kate, meanwhile, was dealing with her own feelings of violation and anger. She had always been naturally trusting, believing in the best of people until proven otherwise. This betrayal had shaken that fundamental aspect of her personality, making her wonder if she would ever be able to trust anyone outside their immediate family again. Detective Matthews informed them that the trap would be set within the next few days. They would plant information about a supposed private family trip, complete with fake itinerary details and security arrangements. If this information appeared in the press, they would have definitive proof of the betrayer's identity and could proceed with an arrest. The waiting was perhaps the most difficult part of the entire ordeal. Every interaction with their staff, every casual conversation, every shared meal felt tainted by suspicion and doubt. They found themselves analyzing every word, every expression, looking for signs of guilt or deception in people who had been part of their daily lives for years. Both William and Kate had trouble sleeping during this period. They would lie awake, at night, replaying conversations and interactions, wondering what signs they might have missed. The stress was affecting their appetite, their energy levels, and their ability to be fully present with their children, who deserved to have parents who weren't constantly distracted by adult problems. Despite the emotional toll, both parents were determined to see the investigation through to its conclusion. They needed to know who had betrayed their trust, not just for their own peace of mind, but to ensure that their children would be safe from future violations of their privacy. The truth, however painful, was necessary for their family's healing and future security. As the trap was set and they waited for results, William and Kate held on to each other and their shared commitment to protecting their family, knowing that whatever revelation awaited them would test their strength and resilience in ways they had never imagined possible. The false information was planted on a Tuesday morning, carefully crafted to appear authentic while being completely fabricated. Detective Matthews and her team had created a believable story about a supposed private family retreat to Scotland, complete with specific dates, accommodation details, and even mentions of activities the children would enjoy. The bait was set with surgical precision, designed to be irresistibly tempting to someone who had been profiting from selling royal family secrets. William and Kate went about their daily routines with a strange mixture of normalcy and underlying tension. They attended their scheduled engagements, helped their children with homework, and shared family meals, all while knowing that somewhere within their trusted circle, someone was potentially preparing to betray them once again. Every staff member they encountered became a potential suspect in their minds, even though they knew logically that the investigation had narrowed the field considerably. Kate found herself studying the faces of people she had known for years, searching for any sign of guilt or deception. The woman who helped prepare their meals, the security guard who had been protecting their family for 3 years, the assistant who managed their schedules. Every interaction felt loaded with suspicion and doubt. She hated what this investigation was doing to her ability to trust, but she knew they needed answers to move forward. Meanwhile, William struggled with the operational aspects of the trap. He had been briefed on how to naturally mention the fake, trip details in casual conversation, making it seem like an innocent slip rather than a deliberate plant. The acting required felt foreign to him. He was used to being straightforward and honest in his dealings with people, and this deception, even for a good cause, felt uncomfortable. Detective Matthews monitored various media outlets and tabloid newspapers, waiting to see if the planted information would surface. Her team had also set up electronic surveillance to track any unusual communication patterns from the palace staff during this critical period. They were looking for phone calls to known tabloid contacts, unusual internet activity, or any other signs that someone was preparing to leak the false information. On Wednesday evening, as the family gathered for dinner, William noticed that Kate seemed particularly quiet. She was going through the motions of normal family life, helping Charlotte with her vegetables, laughing at Louis's silly jokes, listening to George talk about his school day. But there was a distance in her eyes that hadn't been there before this whole ordeal began. The investigation was changing her, and William worried about the long-term effects on her naturally warm and trusting personality. The children, thankfully, remained unaware of the drama unfolding around them. They continued their normal routines, attending school, playing with friends, and enjoying time with their parents. William and Kate worked hard to shield them from the adult concerns that were consuming their thoughts, but both parents wondered how this experience would affect their approach to parenting and family life in the future. Thursday morning brought the first hint that the trap might be working. Detective Matthews called William's private line with news that one of their monitored contacts had received an unusual number of phone calls the previous evening. The timing and frequency of these calls matched the pattern they would expect if someone was trying to sell information about the fake Scottish retreat. The detective urged patience, explaining that they needed more concrete evidence before they could make any accusations. Kate spent Thursday afternoon in her private sitting room, trying to focus on reading but finding her mind wandering constantly to the investigation. She kept thinking about all the private family moments that had been violated, all the intimate conversations that had been turned into tabloid fodder. The anger she felt was unlike anything she had experienced before, a deep, burning rage at having her children's privacy stolen and sold for profit. By Thursday evening, the tension in the palace was palpable to anyone paying close attention. Staff members who were unaware of the investigation noticed that both William and Kate seemed distracted and stressed. Some attributed it to their heavy schedule of public engagements, while others sensed that something more serious was troubling the royal couple. The atmosphere of trust and warmth that typically characterized the household felt strained and artificial. Friday morning brought the breakthrough that Detective Matthews had been waiting for. The planted information about the Scottish retreat had appeared almost word for word in a gossip column in one of Britain's most notorious tabloid newspapers. The article included specific details that had only been shared with one person, details that would allow the investigation team to make a definitive identification of the betrayer. When Detective Matthews called with the news, William felt a mixture of vindication and dread. They finally had proof of who had been violating their family's privacy, but the reality of confronting this person felt overwhelming. This wasn't just about catching a criminal. This was about facing someone who had looked their children in the eye while secretly documenting their lives for profit. Kate's reaction was more immediate and emotional. When William shared the news with her, she began crying, not the quiet, controlled tears she had shed earlier in the week, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that came from a place of profound hurt and betrayal. All the stress and pain she had been holding inside finally found release, and William held her while she grieved for the trust they had lost and the innocence that had been stolen from their family life. The investigation team prepared for the final phase of their work, confronting the suspect with the evidence and making an arrest if necessary. They would coordinate with palace security to ensure that the confrontation happened quietly and professionally, without creating additional drama or trauma for the royal family. The goal was to resolve the situation with dignity while ensuring that justice was served. William and Kate spent Friday evening discussing how they would handle the revelation once the confrontation took place. They needed to decide whether to involve their children in age-appropriate discussions about trust and betrayal, how to rebuild their sense of security within their own home, and what changes they might need to make to prevent similar violations in the future. Despite the pain of the betrayal, both parents felt a sense of relief that the truth was finally within reach. The uncertainty and suspicion that had been poisoning their daily lives would soon be replaced with concrete knowledge, allowing them to begin the process of healing and rebuilding trust where it was deserved. The confrontation would be difficult, but it was a necessary step toward reclaiming their family's peace and security. As they prepared for what would likely be one of the most difficult conversations of their lives, William and Kate drew strength from their love for each other and their shared commitment to protecting their children. Tomorrow would bring answers, and with those answers, hopefully, the beginning of their recovery from this devastating betrayal. Saturday morning arrived with an unusual quiet in Kensington Palace. The children had been sent to spend the day with Kate's parents, a precaution taken to ensure they wouldn't witness what was about to unfold. William and Kate had barely slept the night before, both of them dreading and anticipating the confrontation that would finally reveal the identity of their betrayer. Detective Matthews arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, accompanied by 2 other investigators and a palace security officer. She carried a thick file containing all the evidence they had gathered over the past months, including the definitive proof from the planted information that had appeared in Friday's tabloid. The moment of truth had finally arrived, and everyone involved understood the gravity of what they were about to do. The suspect was summoned to William's private study under the pretense of a routine meeting about household schedules. As they waited, Kate paced nervously by the window while William stood behind his desk, trying to prepare himself mentally for the confrontation. Neither of them could have imagined, even in their worst fears, that they would one day be sitting in their own home waiting to confront someone they had trusted with their most precious secrets. When the knock came at the door, both William and Kate felt their hearts skip a beat. Detective Matthews positioned herself where she could observe the suspect's reactions while remaining somewhat out of sight. William called for the person to enter, and the door opened to reveal Sarah Mitchell, their children's nanny of 4 years. The woman who had tucked their children into bed read them stories and been present for countless family moments. Sarah entered the room with her usual bright smile, completely unaware of what awaited her. She had been with the family since Prince George was young, had helped care for Princess Charlotte as a baby, and had been one of the first people to hold Prince Louis after his birth. She was more than an employee. She had been considered part of their extended family, trusted with their children's safety and happiness. Kate felt her knees go weak as she looked at Sarah's innocent expression. This was the woman who had comforted Charlotte when she had nightmares, who had helped George with his reading, who had played countless games with Louis and made him laugh. The betrayal felt even more devastating now that it had a face and a history of shared memories that would forever be tainted by this revelation. William cleared his throat and gestured for Sarah to sit down, his voice barely steady as he spoke. "Sarah, we need to have a serious conversation with you about some concerning information that has come to our attention." Detective Matthews stepped forward, introducing herself and explaining that she was investigating security breaches within the palace. The change in Sarah's demeanor was immediate and telling. The bright smile faded from her face, replaced by a look of panic and guilt that confirmed everything the investigation had uncovered. Her hands began to tremble slightly, and she kept glancing toward the door as if calculating whether she could make an escape. The woman they had trusted completely was revealing herself to be someone entirely different. Detective Matthews presented the evidence methodically and professionally. She showed Sarah copies of the tabloid articles that contained information only she could have provided, financial records showing payments from media outlets to accounts linked to her name, and most damning of all, the planted information about the Scottish retreat that had appeared in Friday's newspaper exactly as it had been shared with her alone. Sarah's initial response was denial, but it was weak and unconvincing. She claimed that she would never betray the family, that she loved the children like they were her own, that there must be some mistake. But as Detective Matthews continued to present evidence, Sarah's denials became more desperate and less believable. The weight of proof against her was overwhelming and undeniable. Kate found her voice first, her words coming out in a choked whisper. "How could you do this to us, Sarah? We trusted you with our children. We welcomed you into our home, into our family. How could you sell our private moments for money?" The pain in Kate's voice was raw and unmistakable, and for a moment Sarah's composure cracked completely. Tears began flowing down Sarah's face as she finally admitted to what she had done. She explained that she had initially been approached by a tabloid reporter who offered her money for small details about the family's daily life. What started as seemingly harmless information about their favorite foods or daily routines had gradually escalated into more invasive revelations about private conversations and intimate family moments. Sarah tried to justify her actions by claiming she needed the money to help her sick mother with medical bills. But Detective Matthews quickly pointed out that the payment she had received far exceeded any reasonable medical expenses. The truth was that Sarah had become addicted to the easy money and the sense of importance she felt from having insider information that others wanted to buy. William listened to Sarah's explanations with a mixture of anger and disbelief. This woman had been present when they celebrated their children's birthdays, when they comforted them during illness, when they shared family traditions that were sacred to them. She had violated not just their privacy, but their children's right to a secure and protected childhood. The revelation that hurt Kate the most was learning that Sarah had been recording private conversations using a small device hidden in her phone case. Family discussions about the children's development, concerns about their adjustment to public life, and even intimate conversations between William and Kate had been captured and potentially shared with unauthorized parties. The violation felt complete and devastating. Detective Matthews informed Sarah that she was under arrest for breach of privacy, violation of confidentiality agreements, and theft of private information. As the handcuffs were placed on her wrists, Sarah continued to plead for forgiveness, claiming that she never meant to hurt the family and that she regretted her actions deeply. But the damage had been done, and trust, once broken so completely, could never be fully restored. Watching Sarah being led away in handcuffs was surreal for both William and Kate. This woman who had been such an integral part of their daily lives, who had shared meals with them and played with their children, was now revealed to be someone who had systematically exploited their trust for personal gain. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming and complete. After Sarah was removed from the premises, William and Kate sat in stunned silence. The revelation was somehow both shocking and anticlimactic. They had their answers, but those answers brought little comfort. Instead, they were left with the difficult task of rebuilding their sense of security and trust while protecting their children from the knowledge of how completely their privacy had been violated. Detective Matthews assured them that Sarah would face serious legal consequences for her actions, but both William and Kate knew that no legal punishment could undo the damage that had been done to their family's sense of safety and privacy. They would need to find new ways to protect their children while still allowing them to experience as normal a childhood as possible given their unique circumstances. The confrontation was over, but for William and Kate, the real work of healing and rebuilding was just beginning. They had their answers, but now they faced the challenge of moving forward with their lives while carrying the weight of this profound betrayal. The days following Sarah's arrest felt strange and empty for William and Kate. The woman who had been such a constant presence in their home for 4 years was suddenly gone, leaving behind an awkward void that seemed to echo with memories of betrayal. The children kept asking where Sarah was, and both parents struggled with how to explain her absence without destroying their sense of security and trust in the world around them. William spent hours in his study, staring at the chair, where Sarah used to sit during their weekly planning meetings about the children's schedules and activities. He remembered all the times she had offered thoughtful suggestions about their education and development, all the conversations where she had seemed genuinely invested in their well-being. Now he wondered how much of her apparent care had been genuine and how much had been a calculated performance designed to gain deeper access to their private lives. Kate found herself going through their family photo albums, looking at pictures that included Sarah from various family occasions over the years. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, summer vacations, quiet moments at home. Sarah had been present for so many of their treasured memories. Now those images felt tainted, knowing that the woman smiling alongside their children had been secretly documenting their lives for profit throughout most of their relationship with her. The legal proceedings moved forward swiftly. Sarah's lawyer attempted to negotiate a plea deal, arguing that her actions, while wrong, had been motivated by financial desperation rather than malicious intent. But Detective Matthews and the prosecution team were determined to send a strong message about the seriousness of violating royal privacy, especially when children were involved. The case was being treated with the gravity it deserved. Meanwhile, William and Kate had to make practical decisions about how to move forward with their household arrangements. Finding a new nanny would require an even more intensive vetting process than usual, given what they had experienced. They would need someone who could not only care for their children with love and professionalism, but who could also be trusted absolutely with their family's most intimate moments. The psychological impact on both parents was significant. Kate found herself second-guessing every interaction with staff members, analyzing facial expressions and tone of voice for signs of deception or hidden agendas. The natural warmth and openness that had always characterized her relationships with palace employees felt forced and artificial now. She hated what the betrayal had done to her ability to trust, but she couldn't simply will herself back to her previous state of innocent faith in others. William struggled with feelings of responsibility and guilt. As the head of their household, he felt that he should have somehow detected Sarah's deception and protected his family more effectively. He replayed conversations and incidents from the past 4 years, looking for signs he might have missed, warnings that could have alerted him to what was happening under his own roof. The children's adjustment to Sarah's sudden absence was particularly heart-wrenching. Prince George, being older, sensed that something serious had happened but couldn't understand why Sarah had disappeared without saying goodbye. Princess Charlotte kept asking when Sarah would come back to read her bedtime stories, and Prince Louis would look for her in her usual spots around the palace, confused by her sudden absence from their daily routines. William and Kate consulted with child psychologists about how to handle their children's questions without traumatizing them or making them fearful of other caregivers in the future. The experts advised a careful balance of age-appropriate honesty about why Sarah had to leave while reassuring the children that they were safe and loved. It was a delicate conversation that both parents dreaded having. The media coverage of Sarah's arrest was extensive and often sensationalized. While palace officials had tried to keep the details confidential, news of the investigation and arrest had leaked to the press, creating a feeding frenzy of speculation and commentary. William and Kate found themselves in the strange position of being both the victims of a crime and the subjects of intense media scrutiny about how that crime had been committed. Some media outlets were sympathetic, focusing on the violation of privacy and the impact on the children. Others were more critical, questioning how the royal couple could have been so naive as to trust someone so completely without better safeguards in place. The blame and speculation added another layer of stress to an already difficult situation. Kate began having trouble sleeping, often lying awake at night thinking about all the private moments that had been violated. She wondered which conversations had been recorded, which family traditions had been sold to tabloids, which intimate details of their marriage and parenting had become public entertainment. The uncertainty was almost worse than knowing the specific details of what had been shared. William found himself becoming more protective and suspicious of everyone around them. He instituted new security protocols for their household staff, required additional background checks for anyone with access to their family areas, and generally created a more formal and distant relationship with employees. While these measures were necessary for security, they also changed the warm, family-like atmosphere that had previously characterized their home. The couple began attending counseling sessions together to process their feelings about the betrayal and its impact on their relationship and family life. The therapist helped them understand that their reactions were normal responses to such a profound violation of trust, and that healing would take time and patience with themselves and each other. One of the most difficult aspects of their recovery was learning to be vulnerable with each other again. The betrayal had made both William and Kate more guarded and suspicious, even with each other. They found themselves being more careful about what they said and did, even in their most private moments, wondering if somehow their intimacy could be compromised again in the future. Detective Matthews kept them informed about the progress of the legal case against Sarah. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she eventually agreed to plead guilty to multiple charges related to breach of privacy and theft of confidential information. The sentencing would come later, but both William and Kate found that the legal resolution provided only limited emotional closure. As the weeks passed, William and Kate slowly began to rebuild their sense of normalcy. They established new routines, hired temporary childcare assistants with extensive security clearances, and gradually began to trust their instincts again about the people around them. The healing process was slow and sometimes frustrating, but they were committed to not letting Sarah's betrayal destroy their ability to create a loving, trusting home environment for their children. The experience had changed them both in fundamental ways, making them more cautious and protective while also deepening their appreciation for genuine loyalty and discretion. They had learned painful lessons about the price of public life and the constant vigilance required to protect their families, privacy and security in a world where their most intimate moments had monetary value to others. 3 months after Sarah's sentencing to 2 years in prison for breach of privacy and confidentiality violations, William and Kate found themselves standing in their garden, watching their children play with their new nanny, Emma Thompson. The sight should have filled them with simple joy, but both parents carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom about trust and the careful process they had gone through to reach this moment of cautious optimism. Emma was different from Sarah in almost every way. She was older, more experienced, and had worked with high-profile families before, understanding the unique pressures and requirements that came with caring for royal children. More importantly, she had undergone the most extensive background investigation in the history of royal household staff, a process that took nearly 2 months to complete and involved interviews with dozens of former employers, colleagues, and personal references. The children had been slower to warm up to Emma than they had been with Sarah, a change that both saddened and relieved their parents. George, Charlotte, and Louis were more reserved now, less immediately trusting of new people in their lives. While this loss of innocence was heartbreaking, William and Kate recognized that some healthy skepticism might actually protect their children in the long run. Kate had changed significantly during the months of recovery. The woman who had once been naturally warm and immediately trusting with everyone she met now took time to observe and assess new people before opening up to them. She still maintained her public warmth and charm during official engagements, but her private interactions had become more measured and thoughtful. The change wasn't necessarily negative. It represented a maturation born of difficult experience. William had thrown himself into understanding security protocols and privacy protection in ways he never had before. He had met with security experts from around the world, learning about the latest techniques for protecting high-profile families from various types of intrusion and betrayal. His new knowledge had led to comprehensive changes in how their household operated, with clear boundaries and protocols that everyone understood and respected. The legal closure had provided some satisfaction, but both parents recognized that the real healing had to come from within their family and their ability to rebuild trust gradually and carefully. Sarah's imprisonment felt like justice, but it couldn't undo the violation they had experienced or restore the innocence that had been lost. One evening, as they sat together after putting the children to bed, Kate finally voiced something that had been troubling her for weeks. "Do you think we'll ever be able to trust completely again?" she asked William, her voice carrying the weight of months of careful observation and guarded interactions with everyone around them. It was a question that had no easy answer, but one that needed to be acknowledged. William considered her question carefully before responding. He had been asking himself the same thing, wondering if the carefree trust they had once enjoyed would ever return, or if they were destined to live always with a part of themselves held in reserve, always watching and assessing the people in their lives. "Maybe we'll trust differently," he said finally. "More carefully, more gradually, but perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing." The couple had learned to find strength in their shared experience of betrayal and recovery. Their marriage had been tested by the stress and paranoia that followed Sarah's arrest, but it had ultimately grown stronger as they supported each other through the healing process. They had learned to communicate more openly about their fears and concerns, creating a deeper intimacy born of shared vulnerability. Their children had shown remarkable resilience throughout the ordeal, adapting to Emma's different style and routine, while slowly rebuilding their own sense of security. The family had established new traditions and routines that didn't carry the painful associations of Sarah's presence. Sunday morning pancakes, evening story time, and garden adventures had all taken on new meanings and created fresh, untainted memories. Emma had proven herself to be not just professionally competent but genuinely caring in her interactions with the children. She had earned their trust gradually, never pushing for immediate acceptance but allowing relationships to develop naturally over time. Her patient approach had been exactly what the family needed, demonstrating that trustworthy people did still exist and could be identified through careful observation and time. The media attention surrounding the case had eventually died down as news cycles moved on to other stories and scandals. William and Kate had learned valuable lessons about managing public crisis while protecting their family's emotional well-being. They had refused to be drawn into detailed public discussions about the betrayal, maintaining their dignity while allowing the legal system to handle the consequences of Sarah's actions. Palace Security had implemented new protocols based on lessons learned from the investigation. Background checks were more thorough, communication monitoring was enhanced, and clear guidelines were established about staff access to family areas and information. These changes had created a more formal atmosphere, but one that prioritized safety and privacy above casual comfort. Kate had begun speaking publicly about the importance of digital privacy and the protection of children's rights to security and normal development. Without ever directly referencing their personal experience, she had become an advocate for stronger laws protecting families from invasive media practices and unauthorized sharing of private information. Her advocacy work had given positive meaning to their painful experience. William had used his position to push for stronger penalties for privacy violations involving children, working with government officials to strengthen existing laws and create new protections for young people. In the digital age, his efforts had resulted in proposed legislation that would make it a serious criminal offense to profit from unauthorized private information about minors. The anniversary of Sarah's arrest passed quietly, marked by private reflection rather than public acknowledgement. Both William and Kate recognized how much they had grown and changed during that difficult year. They were different people now, more cautious perhaps, but also wiser, stronger, and more appreciative of genuine loyalty and discretion when they encountered it. Emma had by this time become truly part of their extended family, having proven her trustworthiness through consistent actions over many months. The children adored her, and she had demonstrated repeatedly that their well-being and privacy were her highest priorities. Her presence in their lives represented hope that trust could be rebuilt and that good people could still be found and recognized. As William opened the door to their private sitting room that evening, he found Kate reading a letter from one of their charities, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth for the first time in months. The sight filled him with warmth and hope, suggesting that their healing was progressing and that joy was slowly returning to their daily lives. Looking back on everything they had endured, both parents recognized that while Sarah's betrayal had been devastating, it had also taught them valuable lessons about resilience, the importance of family bonds, and the careful process of building trust with others. They had survived one of their worst fears and emerged stronger, wiser, and more committed than ever to protecting their children while still allowing them to experience love, joy, and security in their unique position in the world. The door that had once opened to reveal betrayal and pain now opened to new possibilities, carefully constructed relationships, and a family that had learned to value trust as the precious and fragile gift it truly was.